And next up at UFC Fight Night, Strickland taking on Hernandez. We've got Jean-Paul Lebosnoyani taking on Phil Rowe. Carlos, who you got in this one?
In this one, I'm going to go with Phil Rowe in this one. I don't know too much about Lebosnoyani. I've watched the video on him. What I can see is that, yeah, he does have a heavy shot. So maybe he's the heavier hitter out of the two. I do know that he's well-rounded, to boot. But I also know that Phil Rowe's very unpredictable, and he fights long and he fights at range. He's well-rounded as well, and he's got some high-level grappling. He's got experience in the cage. That just might be a tough matchup for the first fight, in the UFC, because I feel that, Lebosnoyani, even though he's got some hype and he does have the skill to go with it, I just think it's too much too soon right now. I think Phil is a little bit more experienced, a little bit more he's got a little bit more skill to be able to get around whatever tools Lebosnoyani has. And I don't think Mr. Jean-Paul here has what it takes, to set traps for someone like Phil Rowe. Phil's very durable. He's very smart when he fights, and he fights long. So I think it's I think I'm going to go with Phil Rowe on this one. I don't, it could go anyway. It can go either way because Lebosnoyani's new. He's got some hype, but I'm going to go with Phil Rowe. I'm going to go with the experience.
Yeah, Phil Rowe stepping in on somewhat, not necessarily short notice, but obviously replacing Austin Vanderford, who was supposed to fight on this card. But Jean-Paul, he is a guy that his father is trained with the Gracies. He's got fantastic jiu-jitsu, and he is obviously a decent kickboxer. If you watch any tapes on him, he has fantastic kicks. In one fight I watched of his, I believe he threw something like 26, 28 kicks in the first round. He sets up his head kick beautifully, but I worry about the height and range disadvantage here that he's going to have against Phil Rowe. Phil Rowe carrying an 8.5-inch reach advantage, 6'3", very tall for 170. And like Carlos said, I think this is a big step up in competition for a guy that's obviously coming in, making his UFC debut. And Phil Rowe needs this one in a bad way. I think he's probably looked at this matchup and said, hey, there's a guy that's going to stand and bang with me on the feet. He's not a heavy wrestler. And the problem with Phil Rowe that he's run into in a lot of his fights, whether it be Suk Ko, whether it be Jake Matthews, guys want to take him down. They want to grapple him. They want to be able to, pretty much wrestle fuck him for 3 rounds.
Let's wrestle, kid. Let's wrestle. Let's wrestle. Let's wrestle.
He's struggled with that. He's not going to have that problem here, which is why I'm going to pick Phil Rowe. I think Phil Rowe has done a fantastic job working on his boxing. He stays long, throws shots straight down the middle. I worry about the age. I worry about the decline, but I think this is a good matchup for him. I think Paul is going to struggle. He's going to throw a lot of kicks from the outside. He does a good job darting in with the hands, but I think Phil Rowe is going to be able to counter him here. I do think that when Paul, kind of throws combinations, he likes to be able to run in kind of with a flurry of, 2-3 punch combinations, and that's where Phil's, kind of counter boxing with the right hand straight down the middle is going to be available. Phil also has good kicks. He's no slouch on the ground when it comes to his jiu-jitsu. Very good triangles, very good arm bars. He's always rolling for legs as well to kind of cause scrambles. But I think if this one plays out on the feet and he doesn't have to worry about the wrestling, at some point Phil Rowe is going to be able to catch Jean-Paul. I do think Jean-Paul is a nice addition to the UFC, but ultimately I think this is going to be, like Carlos said, too much too soon. Give me Phil Rowe, the underdog here, to get this one done.